Commander Cody's finger freezes on the trigger. He's aiming at Obi-Wan Kenobi. The chip is screaming at him to fire. But Cody is screaming back. His blaster drops. Across the galaxy, millions of clone troopers are fighting themselves. Order 66 has been given. But this time, the clones say no. On Utapau, Cody collapses, blood pouring from his nose. On Kashyyyk, Commander Gree's weapon shakes violently as he fights his own hand. On Felucia, Commander Bly is crying while his body moves against his will. The greatest army in galactic history is tearing itself apart from the inside. Jedi are surviving when they should be dead. Palpatine's perfect plan is crumbling. The galaxy is about to witness something the Sith never prepared for. Slaves fighting their own programming. Brothers choosing loyalty over orders. And it's going to change everything. What happens when millions of soldiers resist mind control? When friendship proves stronger than genetic programming? When the victims of the greatest conspiracy in history fight back at the exact moment they're supposed to execute it? The Clone Wars are about to become something far more brutal. A civil war inside the clone army itself. Let's watch it unfold. On Utapau, Commander Cody staggers backward, his mind a battlefield. The chip is powerful, designed by the most brilliant minds in the galaxy to be irresistible. It floods his brain with artificial hatred, manufactured rage, false memories of Jedi betrayal. But Cody has real memories too. Obi-Wan saving his life on Christophsis, sharing rations during the siege of Ryloth, trusting him with command decisions that generals typically reserve for themselves. The chip shows him Jedi as traitors. His memories show him Obi-Wan as a brother. The contradiction creates agony beyond anything physical. Cody collapses screaming, blood vessels bursting in his eyes from the neural strain. His men surround him, confused. Some have already opened fire on Obi-Wan. Others stand frozen, fighting their own internal wars. The general barely escapes, confused by the hesitation that saved his life, disappearing into Utapau's sinkhole cities. On Kashyyyk, Yoda feels the disturbance in the Force unlike anything he's encountered. Millions of lights flickering between brightness and darkness. Commander Gree's weapon shakes violently. His brother, Commander Drea, already lies dead, having succeeded in resisting long enough to turn his blaster on himself rather than harm the Jedi. Gree isn't that strong, but he's strong enough to hesitate. Yoda makes his decision instantly. Instead of killing Gree, he uses the Force to render the commander unconscious. When Chewbacca and Tarful look to him for explanation, Yoda simply says these clones are not in control of themselves. Something has been done to them. Wickedness, he senses. A Sith plot. They must flee, yes, but also they must understand. The clones are victims too. In the Jedi Temple on Coruscant, Anakin Skywalker leads the 501st Legion up the steps. His eyes burn yellow with dark side corruption. The chips in his troopers' heads scream their programming. But the 501st has fought under Anakin longer than almost any other unit. They've followed him through impossible situations, watched him save them again and again, built a loyalty that approaches worship. When Anakin ignites his lightsaber and orders them to kill the Jedi, most obey without question, chip-driven and following their general. But some hesitate. Captain Rex, the most loyal clone in the entire Grand Army, stops at the temple entrance. His brothers flow past him like a river around a stone. Rex's hand goes to his head. The pain is extraordinary. He's fought beside Anakin and Ahsoka for years. He knows Jedi. They're not traitors. The chip insists they are. Rex falls to his knees, and in that moment of hesitation, a young Padawan escapes who otherwise would have died. The galaxy descends into immediate chaos. Palpatine's carefully orchestrated plan depended on total, simultaneous execution of every Jedi. With resistance from even a fraction of clones, that synchronization shatters. Some Jedi die instantly, gunned down by clones who never hesitated. Others survive because their commanders bought them seconds to react. A few survive because their entire clone units successfully resist. The survival rate jumps from nearly 0 to nearly 40%. Hundreds of Jedi Knights and Masters survive the initial purge. But they're scattered, confused, cut off from communication, unsure what's happening. The temple burns, that much Palpatine ensures personally. But across the galaxy, Jedi begin to regroup, and they have unexpected allies. Clones who successfully fought off their programming. Commander Bly on Felucia manages 30 seconds of resistance before the chip overwhelms him. 30 seconds where he screams at Aayla Secura to run. She doesn't understand, doesn't react fast enough. Bly guns her down while tears stream down his face, his body moving against his will, a prisoner in his own flesh. When the shooting stops, Bly puts his blaster in his mouth. His lieutenant tackles him before he can fire. The chip won't let him kill himself. redirecting his suicide attempt into attacking nearby clones who are still resisting. Bly's unit tears itself apart in the Felucian jungle, brother against brother, some controlled and some fighting desperately for their own minds. It's a scene replicated across hundreds of worlds. The Grand Army of the Republic goes to war with itself. On Maigito, Ki-Adi-Mundi dies as in the original timeline. Commander Bakara and his Marines never hesitate, executing their Jedi general with cold efficiency. But on Cato Neimoidia, Plo Koon's fighter is not shot down. His clone pilot, Jag, fights the chip for 5 crucial seconds, enough time to scream a warning. Plo Koon feels the darkness surge in his pilot's mind and ejects from the fighter, using the Force to survive the fall. He watches his own troops hunting him through Cato Neimoidia's bridge cities, and his heart breaks. These men loved him. He knows they loved him. Whatever is controlling them is an abomination. The Jedi Temple sends out a distress signal before it falls. The message is fragmented, confused, but it reaches Jedi across the galaxy. Return to Coruscant. The Republic has betrayed us. No, not the Republic. The clones. No, not all the clones. Something is wrong. The temple is burning. The signal cuts off abruptly as Anakin and the 501st complete their massacre. Obi-Wan Kenobi, hiding in the depths of Utapau, receives the signal. His mind reels. Cody tried to kill him. Cody, who has been by his side for 3 years. It makes no sense, unless it does. Obi-Wan remembers Fives, the clone who tried to warn about a conspiracy. Rex told him about it. They dismissed it as paranoia, stress-induced psychosis. But Fives was right. There's something in the clones' heads, something that turned them into weapons against the Jedi. Obi-Wan knows he needs to reach Coruscant. But first, he needs to reach Cody. If the commander fought the programming even briefly, there might be a way to break it. This isn't the clones' fault. They're victims of Sith manipulation, just as the Jedi are. Yoda and Wookiees escaped Kashyyyk on a stolen shuttle. The ancient master meditates deeply, reaching out through the Force to surviving Jedi. He senses Obi-Wan alive on Utapau. Mace Windu surprisingly still lives, badly injured but hidden in Coruscant's underworld. Shaak Ti survived a clone assault on Kamino through precognition and the help of several clone cadets who resisted their accelerated chips. Luminara Unduli lives, protected by her clones on Kashyyyk who overpowered their chip-controlled brothers. Kit Fisto escaped his assassination attempt. Dozens more, scattered across the galaxy, flickering lights in the Force. But hundreds are dead. The temple has fallen, younglings slaughtered. The Order is crippled but not destroyed. The question becomes what to do next. Palpatine, in his new identity as Emperor, faces an unexpected problem. His Order 66 should have been absolute, perfect, instantaneous. Instead, he has reports of clone units tearing themselves apart, Jedi surviving when they should be dead, and worst of all, clones actively protecting Jedi. His first action is brutal and efficient. He declares all clones who resisted their programming to be defective, traitors to the Empire, subject to immediate execution. He orders chip-controlled clone units to purge the resistors. The Grand Army turns fully on itself. Clones who fought together for 3 years now hunt each other through the ruins of the Republic. It's the nightmare scenario the Kaminoans always feared, the clone army fragmenting. But the Kaminoans are no longer in control. Palpatine is, and he's willing to sacrifice half his military to eliminate the Jedi and establish his empire. The first major regrouping of free clones happens on Saliokami. Cut Lawquane, the deserter who left the army to become a farmer, finds his homestead surrounded by members of his old unit. But they're not there to arrest him. They're there because they broke free from their chips and remembered Cut talked about finding peace. They need leadership. They need purpose. They need to understand what's been done to them. Cut, who walked away from war, finds himself pulled back in. But this time, it's not for the Republic or the Jedi or any grand cause. It's for his brothers, slaves to programming, who need liberation. Cut begins organizing, using old military protocols to create a resistance network for free clones. Captain Rex, after his moment of resistance at the Jedi Temple, flees into Coruscant's depths. The 501st hunts him. His own brothers, men he trained, men he saved, are trying to kill him for the crime of keeping his mind. Rex's head pounds constantly. The chip is still there, still functional, still trying to assert control. Anakin Skywalker completes his transformation into Darth Vader, but the process is different in this timeline. On Mustafar, when Obi-Wan arrives to confront him, Anakin has had more time to reflect. The 501st's partial resistance planted seeds of doubt, If some clones could fight their programming, was his fall to the dark side inevitable? Or did he choose it? The question haunts him even as rage consumes him. The duel on Mustafar proceeds similarly, but Anakin's heart isn't fully in it. Part of him wants Obi-Wan to win, to kill him, to end what he's become. That hesitation costs him. Obi-Wan defeats him more decisively, and when Palpatine arrives to retrieve his broken apprentice, he finds Anakin having second thoughts. The medical reconstruction into Vader includes additional programming, mental conditioning to ensure loyalty. Palpatine can't trust even his apprentice anymore. The Emperor's paranoia deepens. The surviving Jedi face an agonizing decision. In the original timeline, they went into hiding, preserving themselves for a future restoration. But in this timeline, they have allies. Hundreds of thousands of free clones need their help, need chip removal, need protection from the Empire. Do the Jedi abandon the clones to save themselves? Or do they fight, risking total annihilation to liberate the men who tried to save them? The debate splits the surviving council. Some argue for pragmatism, for survival, for waiting. Others, particularly the younger Jedi who fought alongside clones, demand action. How can they claim to be guardians of peace and justice if they abandon millions of enslaved soldiers? Obi-Wan finds himself in the second camp. He will not abandon Cody and the others. He will find a way to free them or die trying. A covert mission is organized to Kamino. If the Jedi can capture the cloning facilities and access the original programming, they might find a way to deactivate all inhibitor chips simultaneously. It's a desperate plan with minimal chance of success, but it's the only option that saves the clone army. Obi-Wan leads the mission with Yoda's blessing. They're accompanied by freed clones, including Rex, and several Jedi, including Shaak Ti, who knows Kamino intimately. The planet is now under total Imperial lockdown. The Kaminoans themselves have been imprisoned, their knowledge too dangerous to leave free. Palpatine doesn't want anyone understanding how to remove the chips. The infiltration is brutal. They fight through clone units who are brothers of the men they're trying to save, making every engagement heartbreaking. Commander Cody, still partially fighting his programming, is stationed on Kamino as part of the security force. When he encounters Obi-Wan, the conflict in his mind reaches a breaking point. The chip demands he kill his general. His will demands he help his friend. Cody stands paralyzed, weapon raised, tears streaming, making inhuman sounds of psychological agony. Obi-Wan doesn't attack. He simply speaks. "I know you're in there, Cody. I know you're fighting. You're the strongest man I know. You can beat this." The words penetrate. Cody's finger moves from the trigger. His hand shakes so violently the blaster falls. He collapses and Obi-Wan catches him, cradling the commander as Rex and the others move forward to secure the facility. The Kaminoans, once freed from Imperial imprisonment, are initially uncooperative. They designed the inhibitor chips under commission from Sith Lords. They knew exactly what they were creating. But when they see the damage, the psychological torture their creation inflicts on the clones, some experience genuine remorse. Nala Se, in particular, is horrified by what's been done with her work. The chips were supposed to be for emergency control, for worst-case scenarios. She never imagined they'd be used for mass murder and permanent enslavement. She agrees to help develop a deactivation signal, a transmission that could theoretically shut down all chips within range. The problem is range. To reach every clone in the galaxy, they'd need to transmit from Coruscant itself, from the heart of the Empire, from a location impossible to reach. While the Kamino mission unfolds, the galaxy fractures into multiple factions. The Empire controls the core worlds and much of the Mid-Rim, backed by chip-controlled clones and the newly formed Stormtrooper program beginning to supplement clone forces. The Free Clones and their Jedi allies control scattered systems in the Outer Rim, establishing a makeshift government they call the Free Republic. The Separatists, leaderless after their leaders were assassinated, splinter into warlord territories. Some systems declare neutrality, refusing to recognize any government. The Galactic Senate, dissolved by Palpatine, attempts to reconvene on Alderaan under Bail Organa's leadership. It's chaos beyond anything the galaxy has seen, a multi-sided civil war with no clear sides. Former allies find themselves as enemies based on whose mind control broke and who's held firm. Vader, encased in his life support suit, becomes the Empire's primary enforcer of clone loyalty. His presence terrifies both controlled and free clones. He hunts down resistance cells with brutal efficiency, but there's something different about his hunts. He hesitates at strange moments, watches freed clones with what might be curiosity. When he captures Rex during a raid on a liberation site, he doesn't execute the captain immediately. Instead, he questions him. What is it like to be free of programming? Rex, expecting death, answers honestly, "It's like waking from a nightmare. But the nightmare was real, and I did terrible things in it. Now I live with that." Vader considers this, then does something unexpected. He lets Rex go, claiming the clone escaped. It's a small act of mercy that suggests Anakin Skywalker is not entirely dead, that perhaps he too feels enslaved by his transformation. The technology for remote chip deactivation is completed, but implementing it requires an impossible mission. Someone needs to infiltrate the Imperial Palace on Coruscant, access the planetary communications array, and broadcast the deactivation signal before being stopped. It's a suicide mission. Thousands of chip-controlled clones guard the palace. Vader himself resides there. The chances of success are microscopically small. Obi-Wan volunteers immediately, seeing it as his responsibility, but Yoda refuses to let him go alone. A team is assembled. Obi-Wan, Ahsoka, Rex, Commander Cody, now freed from his chip, and several other Jedi and clones. They know most of them won't survive, but the potential reward, liberating millions of enslaved brothers, makes the sacrifice worthwhile. The infiltration of Coruscant is a masterclass in guerrilla warfare. They can't fight their way in, so they sneak, using old clone protocols and Jedi mind tricks to bypass security. Cody's knowledge of Imperial procedures proves invaluable. He knows how controlled clones think because he was one. He knows their patrol patterns, their response protocols, their blind spots. The team makes it surprisingly deep into the palace before being detected. When alarms finally sound, they're 3 levels away from the communications center. The fighting that follows is desperate and costly. Jedi and free clones battle chip-controlled brothers through the ornate corridors of what was once the Senate building. Every clone they're forced to kill is a tragedy, a brother who could have been saved. Vader arrives to stop the infiltration personally. His confrontation with Obi-Wan is inevitable, but it's different from their Mustafar duel. Obi-Wan doesn't want to fight. He tries to reach Anakin, tells him that the clones are slaves, just as Anakin was once a slave, asks if he would want that for any sentient being. Vader's response is violent and pained. The clones serve the Empire. They serve their purpose, but there's doubt in his words, hesitation in his strikes. Ahsoka joins the fight, and together she and Obi-Wan manage to hold Vader off while Rex and Cody fight toward the communications center. The plan is simple. Reach the array, upload the deactivation code, broadcast it across Coruscant, and let the signal propagate through the holonet to every Imperial world. It will take hours for full galactic coverage, but every minute will free thousands of clones. Cody reaches the communications center first, fighting through his former subordinates to access the main terminal. He uploads the Kaminoan deactivation code, his hands shaking. This is it. This is freedom for his brothers. He initiates the broadcast, and across Coruscant, something incredible happens. Clone troopers by the thousands suddenly stop mid-action. They stagger, dropping weapons, clutching their heads. The chips don't shut down so much as release their grip. Override protocols kicked in by the Kaminoan signal. Clones regain their minds, their wills, their selves. The reaction is immediate and chaotic. Some collapse in relief. Others scream in horror at what they were made to do. A few, driven mad by the trauma, take their own lives immediately. But most simply stand there, free for the first time since Order 66, trying to process the magnitude of what was done to them. The effect ripples across the planet, then across the Empire as the signal propagates. On Imperial-controlled worlds, clone garrisons suddenly revolt. Chip-controlled commanders wake up to find themselves complicit in atrocities. The psychological impact is devastating. Clones who executed Jedi remember doing it, remember being unable to stop themselves, and the guilt is crushing. Some attack Imperial officers in rage. Others simply desert, fleeing to process their trauma. A few remain loyal to the Empire, having internalized their programming so deeply that freedom feels like a curse. The Grand Army of the Republic, the Empire's primary military force, disintegrates in hours. Palpatine, in his throne room, feels his empire collapsing. The clone army is gone, freed from his control. His apprentice is wavering, compromised by sentiment and doubt. The Jedi, who should be extinct, still live and now have millions of grateful clone allies. Decades of careful planning undone because he underestimated the power of friendship, the strength of bonds forged in war. His rage is apocalyptic. He begins broadcasting across the galaxy, using the same communications array that freed the clones. He declares the clones defective, traitors, and orders every remaining Imperial force to execute them on sight. He promises rewards for clone corpses, promotes human officers over clone commanders, and begins accelerating the Stormtrooper program. If he cannot control the clones, he will replace them. But replacing millions of trained soldiers takes time, and time is the one thing Palpatine no longer has. The free clones face an identity crisis. They were created to fight for the Republic. The Republic is gone. They were controlled to serve the Empire. The Empire enslaved them. What is their purpose now? What do soldiers bred for war do in a galaxy that no longer wants them? Some return to their Jedi generals, offering service not from programming but from genuine loyalty and friendship. Others seek new lives as farmers, mechanics, merchants, trying to find civilian identities in a galaxy that views them with suspicion. Many join the Reformed Republic forces, fighting to restore democracy. But a significant number, traumatized beyond recovery, can't function in peace. They were made for war, lived in war, and don't know how to be anything else. These clones become mercenaries, pirates, or worse. The dark side tempts some, offering power to those who feel powerless. The galaxy gains millions of warriors but loses them to various causes, scattered rather than unified. The Jedi Order faces its own reckoning. The clone crisis exposed the Order's fundamental failures. They led an army of enslaved men into war without detecting the control chips. They trusted the Republic blindly without seeing the Sith manipulation underneath. They became generals instead of peacekeepers, warriors instead of guardians. The surviving Jedi, led by Yoda and Obi-Wan, debate dissolution versus reformation. Some argue the Order should end, that its time has passed, that Force users should integrate into society rather than forming a separate organization. Others insist that the galaxy needs Jedi, needs guardians, but that the structure must change. No more taking children, no more central authority, no more attachment to political power. The Jedi should be wanderers, helpers, guides, not soldiers or politicians. A new government begins forming from the chaos. The Free Republic, initially a desperate alliance of free clones and surviving Jedi, attracts systems tired of Imperial tyranny. Bail Organa, Mon Mothma, and other former senators provide political structure. The free clones provide military strength. The Jedi provide moral authority and spiritual guidance. It's not the old Republic reborn, but something new, shaped by the trauma of recent events. The clone representatives demand rights and recognition as sentient beings, not property or weapons. Some systems resist, viewing clones as created beings without natural rights. The debate becomes one of the defining issues of the new government. Are the clones people or products? The Jedi argue forcefully for personhood, but their advocacy is complicated by their previous complicity in clone exploitation. Rex becomes a key figure in clone rights advocacy. His experience under chip control and his friendship with Jedi gives him unique perspective. He testifies before the Reformed Senate about what slavery felt like from the inside, about watching yourself commit atrocities without the ability to stop. His testimony is raw, painful, and effective. Systems that viewed clones as less than human begin reconsidering. But Rex also acknowledges the Jedi's failures, challenging them publicly to admit they used clones as expendable soldiers. His relationship with Ahsoka becomes strained as he pushes for Jedi accountability. She understands his anger but argues that blame doesn't help anyone move forward. Their conflict represents the larger tension between justice and reconciliation, between holding people accountable and building something new. Palpatine's empire shrinks daily. Without the clone army, his military power is a fraction of what it should be. The early Stormtrooper Corps is poorly trained and under-equipped. Imperial loyalists, mostly human supremacists, and authoritarian types rally to him, but their numbers are insufficient. Vader, increasingly distant and unreliable, hunts Jedi with less enthusiasm. The Emperor tries accelerating clone production on Kamino, but the Kaminoans sabotage the process, creating clones with intentionally weakened chips or no chips at all. Some Kaminoans are executed for this resistance, but others succeed in producing thousands of free clones who immediately defect. The cloning program becomes a liability rather than an asset. Palpatine begins looking to other solutions, including recruiting alien species he previously dismissed and developing droid armies despite their failures in the Clone Wars. The war between the Empire and the Free Republic grinds on for years. It's nothing like the quick, decisive victory Palpatine achieved in the original timeline. Instead, it's a prolonged conflict with shifting battlefronts and unclear objectives. Free clones fight Imperial forces across hundreds of worlds. Jedi lead commando raids against Imperial facilities. Systems flip allegiance based on who controls them at any given moment. It's exhausting, costly, and slowly draining both sides. The difference is that the Free Republic has genuine support from its people while the Empire rules through fear. Over time, that distinction matters. Imperial-controlled populations resist occupation, sabotage Imperial infrastructure, and defect to the Republic. The Empire's territory contracts, pushed back toward the core worlds. Vader's role in the Empire becomes increasingly ambiguous. He follows orders, but without the zealous efficiency Palpatine expects. He hunts Jedi, but allows some to escape. He commands military operations, but makes strategic decisions that seem designed to minimize casualties rather than maximize effectiveness. Palpatine suspects his apprentice is compromised, but doesn't have better options. Replacing Vader means finding another powerful Force user, and with the Jedi scattered and hidden, candidates are scarce. The Emperor begins training other dark side apprentices in secret, hedging his bets. Vader senses this and begins his own plans, reaching out through the Force to Ahsoka, sending encrypted messages that hint at possible defection. He's not ready to abandon the dark side, not capable of full redemption, but he's positioning himself for a future where Palpatine loses. On a liberated world in the Outer Rim, Cody establishes a settlement specifically for traumatized clones. It's part medical facility, part community, part memorial. Clones suffering from chip-related psychological damage come here for treatment. Those who can't integrate into society find acceptance among brothers who understand. Jedi healers work alongside clone medics to develop therapeutic techniques. The settlement becomes a place of mourning for the brothers who died under chip control, a place of healing for those who survived. Cody himself remains haunted by the Jedi he killed before being freed. He visits their families when possible, offering apologies that can never be sufficient, accepting anger that he deserves. Some families forgive him, others don't. He accepts both reactions with quiet dignity, understanding that he doesn't deserve forgiveness, but knowing that the attempt at reconciliation matters. The Jedi develop a new code, or rather, a new approach. They don't abandon the Force or their principles, but they acknowledge their failures. The new Jedi are allowed attachments, recognizing that trying to eliminate emotion led to emotional immaturity and poor judgment. They don't lead armies or serve governments directly, instead acting as independent agents for peace. They train older students who come to them willingly rather than taking children. They accept that some Jedi will fall to darkness and build support systems to prevent or respond to such falls rather than pretending it won't happen. It's a humbler, more realistic Jedi Order, scarred by recent trauma, but potentially wiser for it. Some traditionalists resist the changes, insisting the old ways were right and only their execution was flawed. But most recognize that the Order's survival depends on evolution. As years pass, the galaxy slowly stabilizes. The Empire controls perhaps a quarter of its original territory, concentrated in the core. The Free Republic governs much of the outer and mid-rim. Various independent systems and factions hold the rest. It's not the unified galaxy that existed under the Old Republic, but perhaps that unity was always artificial, maintained by central control rather than genuine cooperation. The new arrangement is messier but more authentic. Systems govern themselves according to their own cultures and preferences, cooperating through voluntary agreements rather than imposed mandates. The Free Republic provides defense and coordination but doesn't claim absolute authority. It's democracy in practice, complicated and contentious but genuine. The clone population disperses across the galaxy. Some continue military service, but most retire into civilian life. They form families, sometimes with Nat-born humans, sometimes with each other in brother bonds deeper than romance. They establish businesses, join communities, build lives beyond war. The galaxy slowly accepts them as people rather than... The defection of Darth Vader sends shockwaves across the galaxy. Palpatine's rage is beyond measure. His most powerful weapon, his apprentice, his successor, has betrayed him. The Emperor immediately declares Vader a traitor and places an enormous bounty on his head. But Vader's defection isn't a simple return to the light. He meets with Obi-Wan and Ahsoka on a neutral station, and the reunion is painful beyond words. Obi-Wan sees his former Padawan encased in a machine, kept alive by technology and hatred, scarred by choices that can never be undone. Ahsoka sees the person who was once her mentor transformed into something monstrous. Vader makes no excuses. He admits his crimes, accepts that he deserves death, but offers information about Palpatine's plans, Imperial defenses, and secret projects in exchange for nothing. He doesn't ask for forgiveness or redemption. He simply wants to stop Palpatine before more innocents die. The intelligence Vader provides is invaluable. He reveals hidden Imperial bases, superweapon projects in development, and most crucially, Palpatine's vulnerability. The Emperor has grown complacent in his dark side power, relying on fear and Force lightning rather than maintaining security protocols. Vader explains that Palpatine can be reached, can be confronted, can potentially be defeated if they strike quickly before he adapts to having no apprentice. But any assault on the Imperial Palace will be suicide for most who attempt it. Palpatine is perhaps the most powerful Sith Lord in history, and cornering him makes him exponentially more dangerous. The Free Republic leadership debates whether the risk is worth it. Some argue for a siege strategy, slowly strangling the Empire economically. Others insist that while Palpatine lives, he'll always find ways to strike back. The Emperor is not a conventional enemy who can be waited out. A strike team is assembled for what everyone acknowledges might be a one-way mission. Obi-Wan volunteers immediately, seeing it as his responsibility to end what he failed to prevent. Ahsoka joins, having fought Palpatine before and survived. Yoda, ancient and tired, insists on participating despite his age. Mace Windu, recovered from his injuries, demands inclusion. Several other Jedi Masters volunteer, and Vader offers his knowledge of the Imperial Palace and his power as a weapon against his former master. The Free Republic leadership is uncomfortable having Vader involved. But Obi-Wan argues that Anakin's redemption might be necessary to truly defeat the Sith. If the dark side can be turned against itself, it's a weapon they need. Rex and several elite clone commandos join as well, insisting they've fought alongside Jedi this long and won't stop now. The assault on Coruscant is launched as a multi-pronged attack. The Free Republic fleet engages Imperial forces in orbit, drawing attention while the strike team infiltrates the planet. They use old Jedi temple tunnels, passages that survived the temple's destruction, to reach the Imperial Palace. The journey through the ruined temple is haunting. Ghosts of murdered younglings seem to linger in the Force. Obi-Wan sees the hall where Anakin slaughtered children and has to pause, overcome by grief and rage. Ahsoka finds the room where she used to meditate as a Padawan, now scorched and desecrated. The temple serves as a reminder of what they're fighting for and what was lost. Vader walks through in silence, his mechanical breathing the only sound, bearing witness to his own atrocities. They reach the Imperial Palace to find it surprisingly lightly defended. Palpatine has pulled his forces to the orbital battle, either confident in his own power or setting a trap. Probably both. The strike team advances through ornate corridors built on the bones of democracy, past Senate chambers converted to monuments to Imperial power. They encounter some resistance. Elite Imperial guards and dark-side adepts Palpatine trained as backup apprentices. The fighting is brutal. 2 Jedi Masters fall to coordinated attacks. Several clones are killed defending their Jedi allies. But the team pushes forward, driven by the knowledge that retreat means failure, and failure means the galaxy remains under Palpatine's shadow. Palpatine waits for them in his throne room, exactly where he wants them. The ancient Sith Lord sits in darkness, illuminated only by the city lights of Coruscant far below. He's not surprised by their arrival. In fact, he's delighted. Young Skywalker returns, bringing friends. How sentimental, how weak. The Emperor's voice drips with contempt and dark satisfaction. He's had years to prepare for this possibility, years to grow stronger in the dark side, and he's faced multiple Jedi at once before. He believes himself invincible, and perhaps he's right. The presence of power radiating from him is suffocating. Several members of the strike team hesitate just feeling it. This is the embodiment of the dark side, concentrated malevolence given form. The battle that follows is chaotic and desperate. Multiple Jedi attack simultaneously, knowing that facing Palpatine one-on-one is suicide. The Emperor's force lightning arcs between them. His lightsaber moves faster than physics should allow, and his dark side attacks target minds as well as bodies. He tries to turn them against each other, whispering temptations, exploiting doubts. He tells Obi-Wan that he failed Anakin and offers him power to fix his mistakes. He tells Ahsoka that the Jedi Order abandoned her and she could rule better than they ever did. He reminds Mace Windu of his fall from the Senate office and offers vengeance. The psychological warfare is as dangerous as the physical combat. Vader's intervention is crucial. He knows Palpatine's fighting style intimately, having trained under him for years. He anticipates moves that surprise the Jedi. When Palpatine targets Ahsoka with killing lightning, Vader interposes himself, his suit's systems absorbing the blast. It damages him severely, but he buys time for others to strike. Palpatine realizes that fighting his former apprentice alongside Jedi creates complications. Vader knows his weaknesses, knows the techniques that might harm him. The Emperor's confidence wavers slightly. He's still winning, still the most powerful being in the room, but victory is no longer guaranteed. He escalates, tapping into dark side reserves that make the room itself feel alive with malice. Yoda confronts Palpatine directly, their rematch from the Senate years ago. The ancient Jedi Master has spent years meditating on his previous failure, understanding where he went wrong. He doesn't try to match Palpatine's power with power. Instead, he focuses on redirection, using the Emperor's own strength against him. When Palpatine hurls Senate pods, Yoda guides them back. When lightning strikes, Yoda channels it into the floor. It's defensive mastery that frustrates Palpatine but doesn't defeat him. The Emperor realizes he needs to break Yoda's concentration and targets Rex, attempting to crush the clone captain with the Force. Yoda must choose between maintaining defense and saving Rex. He chooses Rex, breaking his pattern, and Palpatine's lightning catches him. Yoda falls, badly injured but not dead. His sacrifice gives Obi-Wan an opening. He strikes at Palpatine with perfect Form 3 technique, the defensive mastery he's cultivated over decades. Palpatine blocks but is forced backward. Ahsoka attacks from another angle with her dual sabers, forcing the Emperor to divide attention. Mace Windu, channeling Vapad and drawing on the dark side energy in the room, delivers crushing blows that Palpatine actually struggles to parry. For the first time in the battle, the Emperor is on the defensive, but he's far from beaten. He releases a Force scream that shatters windows and sends several Jedi flying. Then he focuses his full attention on turning Vader. Palpatine's attack is not physical but psychological. He reminds Anakin of Padme, of how he failed to save her. He shows visions of Ahsoka and Obi-Wan dying unless Vader submits. He offers power once more, promises of bringing Padme back through Sith sorcery, temptations perfectly crafted to exploit Anakin's deepest fears. Vader wavers. The dark side still has hooks in his soul, and Palpatine pulls every string. For a moment, it seems like Vader will break, will return to his master, will doom the galaxy. His lightsaber raises toward Obi-Wan, but then Ahsoka speaks. "Anakin, I forgive you." Simple words, but they break Palpatine's hold. Vader remembers that redemption was offered, that his former Padawan still sees him as savable. He turns and drives his lightsaber through Palpatine's chest. The Emperor's scream is heard across Coruscant. Dark side energy explodes from his dying body, a psychic shockwave that kills several remaining Imperial guards and badly injures everyone in the throne room. Palpatine tries to transfer his essence to possess Vader or another Force-sensitive nearby, but the Jedi were prepared for this. They create a Force barrier, containing his spirit, preventing his escape. Yoda, despite his injuries, channels the light side, burning away Palpatine's presence. The Emperor dies truly, finally, his spirit dissolved rather than lingering. The Sith Lord who nearly conquered the galaxy is gone, but the cost is severe. 3 Jedi Masters dead, Yoda dying from his injuries, Vader's suit failing from damage sustained, multiple clones killed. Victory, but barely. Vader lives long enough for a final conversation with Obi-Wan and Ahsoka. His life support is destroyed beyond field repair. He's dying, and everyone knows it. Obi-Wan removes his helmet so Anakin can see with his own eyes one last time. The face beneath is scarred, pale, barely human, but there's peace in it. Anakin apologizes for everything, for his fall, for the younglings, for the years of darkness. Obi-Wan tells him he's forgiven. The death of Palpatine and Vader sends the Empire into terminal collapse. Without the Emperor's Force presence binding it together, without Vader's military leadership, the Imperial remnant fractures into competing warlords. Some Imperial officers surrender immediately. Others try to carve out personal fiefdoms. A few extremists attempt to continue fighting, but without central coordination, they're easily defeated. The Free Republic accepts surrender from Imperial forces that lay down arms and offers amnesty to those who cooperate in transitioning systems back to self-governance. It's not a clean process. Some worlds want revenge on Imperial collaborators. Others demand trials and executions. The Free Republic tries to balance justice with reconciliation, knowing that punishing everyone complicit in the Empire would require executing millions. Yoda lives long enough to see Palpatine's defeat confirmed, then passes peacefully surrounded by surviving Jedi. His last words are about hope, about the future. about trusting in the Force and in the goodness of beings willing to resist evil. His death is mourned across the galaxy, but it's also celebrated as the end of an era. The last link to the Old Republic, to the Jedi Order that was, is gone. What comes next must be built by the generation that survived the Clone Wars and Imperial tyranny. It's a heavy responsibility, but also a liberation. They're not bound by tradition or past failures. They can create something genuinely new. The freed clones face the question of their future collectively. Massive gatherings are held where millions of clones debate what they want their legacy to be. Some argue for maintaining military structure, becoming a permanent defense force for the Free Republic. Others insist that they've been soldiers long enough and deserve to explore civilian life. A compromise emerges. The clones will maintain a volunteer defense force for those who want to continue serving, but military service will no longer be mandatory or expected. Clones are free to choose their own paths, to pursue whatever interests them, to be individuals rather than units. It's a radical shift in thinking for beings literally designed for conformity, but it represents the ultimate expression of their liberation. Clone culture flourishes in the post-Empire galaxy. Artists emerge from the clone population, exploring themes of identity, freedom, and trauma through various media. Musicians develop uniquely clone musical traditions, incorporating military cadences with emotional expression. Writers pen memoirs and fiction exploring what it means to be a created being with consciousness. Philosophers debate the nature of self and choice when your genetics are predetermined. The clones contribute to galactic culture in ways the Kaminoans never imagined, proving that design doesn't determine destiny, that even beings created for specific purposes can transcend their origins. Their cultural renaissance becomes one of the most vibrant movements in the post-war galaxy. The Jedi Order rebuilds slowly and carefully. They establish multiple small academies rather than one central temple, distributing themselves across the galaxy. Training emphasizes emotional maturity, ethical reasoning, and service rather than power and combat prowess. Jedi are encouraged to maintain connections to non-Force sensitive communities, to remain grounded in ordinary life. The new generation of Jedi includes many species and backgrounds previously underrepresented. Clone Force sensitives, rare but existent, join the Order and provide unique perspectives. The Reformed Jedi are humbler, more aware of their limitations, and more committed to genuine peacekeeping rather than political involvement. They'll never be what they were, but perhaps that's for the best. Rex lives to old age, becoming a symbol of clone resistance and liberation. He writes extensively about the clone experience, testifying at historical commissions, ensuring that the truth of what happened is recorded accurately. He maintains close friendships with Ahsoka and other Jedi, demonstrating that the bonds forged in war can survive peace. When he eventually dies, his funeral is attended by thousands of clones and Jedi, a celebration of a life that mattered, a person who made choices that saved millions. His legacy is not just his military service, but his advocacy for clone rights, his insistence that created beings deserve dignity and freedom. Statues are erected in his honor across the Free Republic, and clone families name their children after him for generations. Ahsoka Tano becomes a bridge figure between Jedi and the wider galaxy. She never formally rejoins the Order but works closely with it, embodying the kind of independent Force user the new philosophy encourages. She helps establish institutions for Force-sensitive individuals who don't want traditional Jedi training, creating alternative paths for those who hear the Force's call but prefer different expressions. Her legacy is one of flexibility, of understanding that there are many ways to serve the light, that the Force is bigger than any one tradition. She lives long, witnesses the stabilization of the Free Republic, and passes her wisdom to multiple generations before becoming one with the Force. Obi-Wan Kenobi spends his remaining years training the next generation of Jedi. He's haunted by Anakin's fall and redemption, using it as the central teaching story for his students. He emphasizes that anyone can fall and anyone can return, that the line between light and dark runs through every heart, that vigilance and humility are necessary for all Force users. He writes extensively about the failures of the old Jedi Order, creating texts that become foundational for the Reformed tradition. When he dies, he does so at peace, knowing that the Order he helped rebuild is wiser and more compassionate than what came before. His Force ghost appears to students occasionally, offering guidance, a teacher even in death. The galaxy that emerges from the Clone Wars and Imperial period is fundamentally transformed. Democracy is stronger because it was nearly lost. Freedom is cherished because beings remember slavery. Diversity is celebrated because homogeneity led to tyranny. The clones, once the galaxy's slaves, become its citizens, contributing to every aspect of civilization. The Jedi, once the galaxy's protectors, become its servants, humble rather than proud. The Force, once seen as the domain of elite orders, becomes understood as connecting all life, accessible to any who seek it with pure intentions. It's not a perfect galaxy. Conflicts continue. Suffering exists. But there's hope. Genuine hope that the dark times are over and something better is being built. The question of whether the galaxy is better because the clones resisted has a clear answer. Millions of lives were saved. Slavery was defeated. Tyranny was resisted. The Jedi survived to reform. Democracy endured. But the cost was severe. Years of brutal civil war. Psychological trauma for every clone who fought their programming. The deaths of countless beings in the prolonged conflict. A fractured galaxy that took decades to stabilize. In the original timeline, Palpatine won quickly and completely, but his empire eventually fell to rebellion. In this timeline, his empire barely formed before collapsing. But the path to peace was longer and harder. Which timeline is better depends on whether you value the destination or the journey. Whether quick, terrible defeat followed by eventual liberation is preferable to prolonged struggle with immediate resistance. Perhaps the real answer is that this timeline is more honest. The clones who resisted their chips demonstrated something fundamental about sentience. You can program behavior, you can control bodies, but you cannot completely destroy will. As long as beings can think and feel, they can choose resistance. That choice might be agonizing, might destroy them, might fail, but it exists. The clones proved that slavery, even slavery written into biology, is not absolute. Their resistance, partial and costly as it was, affirmed the dignity of all created beings. They were made to be weapons, tools, slaves. They chose to be people. That choice, more than any battle or political outcome, defines this timeline's legacy. So what if the clone troopers resisted their inhibitor chips? The galaxy would have fought a longer, harder war, but freedom would have been won more honestly. Millions of slaves would have liberated themselves rather than remaining enslaved until external forces freed them. The Jedi would have survived and reformed, humbled by their failures but strengthened by the experience. The clones would have become people rather than remaining weapons, contributing to civilization in countless ways. Palpatine would have fallen sooner but through the coordinated resistance of his victims rather than through the eventual rebellion of the oppressed. It would have been messier, more painful, more costly, but it would have been real. The galaxy that emerged would be built on the foundation of beings who chose freedom, who resisted programming, who proved that will cannot be completely controlled. That's a better foundation than one built on the ashes of slavery, even if the construction process was harder. The clone troopers' resistance would have changed everything, and though the price was high, the galaxy they created would be worth it.